Hello friends, thanks for stopping by. I realize I have not posted anything in a very long time, and I'm gonna actually have a separate video about that where I get a little more personal and I approach the subject matter of the second purpose of the title of this channel, which is Learn as You Grow. I meant that not only as a person that just started growing food 4 years ago, so I still consider myself a novice and learning as I grow food. But the other meaning of the title of this channel was to eventually open up what it means to learn as you grow as a person, as a human being, as a child of God, as part of who we are, growing in that way. And so I almost kind of went too far on that segue, but I will be posting another video on why I haven't been around for a while. But I wanted to give you a quick update on the garden and tell you kind of an overall review of how things worked out this year. And the interesting thing about growing is that each year is so very different, and as you branch out to growing new things and growing things that have been, a staple that you always do, it's always a new experience each and every year. And I thought I had down pat how to grow tomatoes and how to grow cucumbers. And this year I had a really terrible time with them. I think the lesson was I tried to, it might have been, this is just a hypothesis, but I created my own fertilizer, and rather than doing a tablespoon to a gallon, I just kind of dumped some into the watering cans and went for it. I was thinking, the more the merrier, but that actually might have killed a bunch of my tomatoes because they weren't producing at the time, and I think I was just trying to rush things. And anyway, so didn't have as great a luck this year with tomatoes. All of that is to say, what I have had luck with are a couple of these plants that are just now, we are moving into September, and some of these tomato plants that were bestowed upon me by our local master gardeners group, they have worked out well, but they're not producing until like right now. They were just kind of stunted with the extreme heat that we had this year, and they're now kicking into action. So those are the exception to my tomato experience this year. That and volunteers. I had a lot of volunteers this year, and so they popped up in places like my herb garden, which was a raised bed, and all of these places where I didn't want them, and I pulled them out and planted them in their own little section, and those have done well too. And the fun thing about volunteers, of course, is that you never know what it's actually going to turn out to be. Speaking of volunteers, this here is a loofah volunteer. I did not intentionally grow loofah this year. I had the 2 years prior, but then one popped up also in that raised herbal bed, and so I transplanted it, and sure enough, now I've got my first loofah on. So that was a pleasant surprise, and I'm glad that that happened, because I kind of regretted making that call of not growing loofah. Also with the loofah and the tomatoes, I would just like to say that I think one of the other lessons learned was last year when I grew tomatoes. I intentionally grew tomatoes. These are all volunteers. I grew the loofah up over my tomato plants, and I thought maybe it would produce more if I this year gave them more sun, and so I did not plant the loofah over the tomato plants, and I had a worse year. So it was extremely, we had a very rainy spring into summer, and then summer hit and God just turned off the faucet, and we didn't have hardly any rain for probably a month, and we had, 90 to 100 degrees for that month as well. And so I believe in retrospect that the loofah was serving a purpose, and that I'm going to continue to do that in the future, because it can get really big and bushy and provide some shade, and you can always, guide the vines to grow in the direction that you want as they're growing. So as to provide pockets of sunlight to come through. Anyway, so that was another very valuable lesson learned. Y'all may have seen my pumpkin vine that I was loving so much. It's, it needs to be trimmed. I have been gone for, I just got back last night from a whirlwind road trip to Massachusetts and back. And that's part of the other video I'll be sharing later as well. But, so I've got a lot of tidying up to do. As you can see, there's growth everywhere, and there's a lot of trimming that needs to be done. I just harvested one pumpkin, the first pumpkin I've ever grown. There it is in my little basket. And I did not grow pumpkins for Halloween. I grew pumpkins because I want to try to make a pumpkin salsa. But anyway, I've got another one on the vine, so I'm very excited about that. As run down and worn out as this vine looks, it is still producing. It's got another burst of energy, and we're moving into a season in which we'll have cooler temperatures. Today I think it's supposed to get up to 73. That is such a welcome break. But that being said, often our freezes don't start until late October. Last year it was more like November. So there's still plenty of growing time for summer type vegetables. And then of course we can later talk about what I'm going to be putting in the ground for the fall. But so I'm doing a bunch of pruning today because I'm back now, and harvesting as you can see, this thing had the roller coaster ride of a life, but it finally got annihilated by squash bugs. I know that's what it is because I was killing them before I left on my trip. So I will harvest these little spaghetti squash, and probably just pull this out of here and use this as a bed for some fall planting. I wanted to circle back. This tomato over here, all of these tomatoes here. This was my cucumber bed. I pulled the cucumbers out about a month ago. Cucumber experience was this year a quick run of being inundated with them, and then the vines all got sick. I think it might have been the homemade fertilizer that caused that. But all of these tomatoes right here, look at how big this thing is. I went away for 5 days, and it's so big and healthy. And this is a volunteer. All of these are volunteer tomatoes. So that's one of the great perks of composting, is that compost often starts a plant for you without you even trying. I've got some peppers to harvest over there that you might have seen in the background. I'm growing more flowers this year. I will say that another experience of summer 2025 growing was there was a noticeable, observable die-off or lack of pollinators this year. I'm starting to see butterflies now, probably because it's cooler, but the amount of bees that that I'm seeing in the garden this year compared to last year is amazingly decimal. Or maybe I didn't use that. Yeah, they were wiped out. I did not see a lot of them. I don't know what word I was looking for, forgive me. Anyway, I've got some peas to harvest, some green beans, I mean, to harvest now that I'm back. These were planted really late, which is why they're just fruiting now. And I was hoping that maybe I would have some zucchini when I returned. And I do! I've got a zucchini! So these were being attacked pretty significantly by those squash bugs. That one pretty much, I think, has gotten hit hard. Need to trim that back. But a few things that I did, as it looked like they were all gonna die, and this is the second batch of zucchini that I planted. I planted the first round of them for early summer. They all got hit by vine borers, as did this guy here. But look, this guy's coming back to life. And this guy over here, this one got attacked by a vine borer early in the season. Or actually not early in the season, but right after I planted it. There's a squash bug. You just take them and you squish them. But this one was the healthy one, and now it's dead. The other thing that I did was the staking. There they are. That's what's killing them. You see all those guys? You see that guy right there? Missed him because I'm trying to do a phone and a squashing session at the same time. There we go. You just pinch them. Anyway, that's why that's dead. But I have a zucchini here. I'm very excited about it. So this guy made it. This staking up of the base of the vine, to circle back to what I was trying to say, has been helpful. Trimming away the bottom leaves, but behind where the fruit is growing, and then lifting this stuff up off the ground. And then the other thing I did was I broke out some diatomaceous earth and I sprinkled that on the ground. So I might do another squash bug squashing session this afternoon and see if I could bring this guy back to life so that he might produce some zucchinis in the next couple months. These are some of the failed tomatoes. They never, unfortunately, these are mortgage lifters too. Thank you, Auntie, for gifting me those, but they just didn't perform well this year, and it might have been all my fault for going too hot and heavy on my natural fertilizer. Peach tree, that's gonna have to be a separate video. Another epic fail this year. Sure is a pretty tree though. I wasn't able to spray it with horticultural oil frequently enough while it was produced, just as it started to produce fruit, because at that point it was constantly raining, and the oil's not going to stay on. They say to spray it when you know you're going to have a stint in which there's no rain, and while it was producing fruit or beginning to produce fruit is when it was raining constantly, and so I couldn't use the spray. But the pears, I've got a bunch of pears on, and although they look like they're producing, I haven't figured out what the secret is about eating them. I have looked up that they don't soften on the tree, but those that I've picked, I've put in paper bags to try to ripen them and soften them up. It was the strategy that I read and watched videos on, but it hasn't worked out yet. It goes from hard to rotten. So If any of you out there have experience with growing pears or peaches, please leave some comments for me, and I will pass along your knowledge to any ears that want to hear. Anyway, that's a quick update, you guys, and I just want to say thank you all for being friends of mine. I know everybody on this channel right now, I know personally, and maybe someday that will be different, but I just want you to know how much I appreciate every one of you and how precious the human experience is, how it's made rich by our friendships and our human connections. And it's sacred. It really is sacred, because friendship is a gift from God. It really is one of the things that just that, and family, that makes life worth living. So thank you all very much, and I love you. And please leave a comment or a like, or some kind of correspondence would be great. It would be wonderful to hear from you. All right. God bless.